Good day, friends. In today's video, I'll talk about the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement that has been signed between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia on September 17th. Now, this was a very important event, which is why Pakistan Prime Minister and Pakistan Army Chief, they both were there for the signing of this agreement in Riyadh. Now, this agreement is precisely what it says it is. And what it says in a nutshell is this, that aggression on one will be considered aggression on both. There should be no ambiguity at all into what this agreement is about. As I said, it is what it is. But the issue is about interpreting this agreement. And this is where I believe the Indian analysts, the Indian media, and plenty of foreign analysts, they have got it all wrong. And this is precisely what I want to talk about in my video, the interpretation of this agreement. But before I do that, there are three events which are closely linked to this agreement that need to be understood in brief. Now, the first is that it was not a coincidence at all that on 17th of September, when this agreement was being signed in Riyadh, in Islamabad, a press conference was held by retired General Khalid Kidwai, who is now the senior advisor to Pakistan's National Command Authority, and he has been a very high profile chief of Pakistan's Strategic Plans Division, which is responsible for nuclear weapons. And at this press conference, General Kidwai made two disclosures. First was he said that when the air battle happened on the first night of Operation Sindoor, Pakistan Air Force shot down 7 fighter jets of the Indian Air Force, 4 of which he said were Rafales. Now, to substantiate his point, he gave evidence also. At the press conference, he gave the tail numbers of the airframes of the 4 Rafales, which Pakistan said it has shot down of the Indian Air Force. Now, this is the first time that Pakistan has given such evidence to the world about 4 Rafales being shot down. So the point is, the ball really is now in India's court. India can either refute this evidence, or India can give a counter evidence, or India can just keep quiet. Assuming that India will just keep quiet about the whole thing, the world in any case believes what it does, even before this disclosure was made. And that is that the outcome of Operation Sindoor was about Pakistan military demonstrating its credible conventional war capabilities against India, a big thing. Now, the second disclosure of General Kidwai was that after Operation Sindoor, we know that the Pakistan Army has raised the Army Rocket Force Command. And according to the general, this command raises the nuclear threshold by inserting an additional layer of deterrence between Pakistan's conventional war deterrence and nuclear war deterrence. So what he's saying here is that the existing credible conventional war fighting capabilities of Pakistan will get further strengthened because of this rocket force command which the Pakistan Army has created. And I agree with General Kidwai's assessment on this. But the point to note here is that this press conference, as I said, was not a coincidence. It was held to give a clear signaling that this agreement, which was being signed in Riyadh, was actually about conventional war capabilities of Pakistan. General Kidwai did not make any reference to the nuclear weapons of Pakistan. If anything, he said that the raising of the Army Rocket Force Command will raise the nuclear threshold level, not lower it. Now, I come to my second point, which is linked with my first point. I have no doubts that it was the performance of Pakistan in Operation Sindoor that was one of the reasons why the Pakistan Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir was invited by President Trump to lunch in the White House on June 18th. Now, you see, the problem of President Trump is that the Middle East is a highly volatile region, hugely unpredictable. And President Trump is not in control of America's foreign policy in this region at all. It is no secret that Israel runs America's foreign policy in Middle East, and therefore it is important for President Trump to stay ahead of the Israeli game. What that means is that whatever Israel does, and of course it is doing it with the support of the US military, but President Trump cannot control that. It so appears in the Middle East. So, whatever Israel does, Trump has to stay ahead of the game to see that if he has still to be recognized as a peacetime president, he should find a way out to diffuse the crisis created by Israel at the earliest. Ensure that it does not lead to an escalation into a full-fledged war or a big war. So, in this context, I believe, amongst other things, that Trump would have spoken with Asim Munir. He would have got Asim Munir's assessment of Middle East and especially Iran, because there can be no better country to give the assessment on the Middle East and specifically Iran than the Pakistan top leadership. So he would have got that. And I also believe that that is what helped Trump in actually diffusing the problem or ending the war very quickly, that Israel leashed on Iran. So therefore, as far as Trump is concerned, he obviously would want assessment from the Pakistan leadership on a regular basis, and he simply cannot himself be talking with the Pakistan leadership on a regular basis. So the way out that Trump has found is that his close confidant, Sergei Gore, has been nominated to be America's ambassador in Delhi with an additional role of special envoy to South and Central Asia. Now, in this capacity, Gore is at liberty. He is free to travel to Pakistan, meet up with their leadership, and get their sense of what is happening in the Middle East, and then convey that directly to his boss, President Trump. Alongside, Pakistan, we know, is part of America's Central Command. Even the Central Command relations with the Pakistan military, they would have strengthened, because even US CENTCOM would want to know about how things are shaping up or what is going to happen in the Middle East, because America has something like over 12 military bases and over 30,000 troops in the Middle East. And we saw that what used to be called its deterrence, these troops there, actually became its vulnerability during the Israel-Iran war, and I have done a video on this. So Americans obviously would be very worried. They would want to know quick assessments and updates from the Pakistan military, and specifically for the GCC nations, the 6 member nations where Saudi Arabia is the biggest country. And in all these 6 countries of the GCC, the Americans have their air bases, their military bases. And as far as Qatar is concerned, Americans have the advanced headquarters of the CENTCOM in Qatar. In other words, all these 6 countries of the GCC are dependent on the US security so far. But obviously, they would also be noticing that Trump is not in control of its foreign policy, of his foreign policy in the Middle East, and Israelis have gone rogue. They have gone berserk in the Middle East, and they are just, hitting one country after the other. So they cannot be sure about how much security can the Americans provide them, but more on this subject a little later. But the point to make here is that as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan and America today have a strategic relationship because of this. Both at the political level as well as the military level, the Americans want constant advice and opinion and assessments of the Pakistanis. So this is a strategic relationship which has been built, and all because of Operation Sindoor. Now, as far as China is concerned, China will certainly have no problems at all in the Pakistan side giving good assessments to the Americans. Why? Because even the Chinese want peace in the Middle East. They have invested a lot there. In fact, Middle East is very interesting. It is a volatile region, and at the same time, the Americans do not see a competition with China in the Middle East, which is the reason that America has not challenged China's growing role in trade, infrastructure building, energy transition. Now I'm talking specifically of Saudi Arabia in reference to the agreement which has been signed. So the Americans have no problem with Chinese growing role, because in these areas that I have just spoken, they actually have no competition with China, so they are keeping away from there. And as far as China is concerned, China has never challenged America's dominance in security in the Middle East. China is the only great power which does not have a single military base in the Middle East, and it has no troop at all in the Middle East. So there is no conflict of interest. So moreover, as far as China is concerned, China has done some positive things. For example, we saw that the Chinese got the Iranians and the Saudis together for a rapprochement in Beijing, and the Chinese got the 14 Palestinian groups together in Beijing. So all this contributes to stability in the region, and obviously Trump cannot be unhappy with this, what the Chinese have done. As far as Saudis are concerned, Saudis today are ambitious. They have a vision plan of 2030 where they understand that oil will not last forever. So they are looking at reindustrialization. They are looking at coming of the new age technologies. And of course, as far as technologies are concerned, not yet, but soon in my assessment, there will be a competition in the technologies, not only to Saudi Arabia, but to all the 6 members of the GEC between America and China. But this is a different subject altogether. So the point here is that the Saudis, they till now wanted the Americans for security, and they want the Chinese because, amongst other things, Chinese is their largest oil market. And they want the Russians because Russia is the most important partner of OPEC. Having said this, ideally Saudi would want to be independent of all these great powers, but obviously that is not possible. Now, coming to the issue of security, as I said, Saudi Arabia and all the GCC countries are no longer sure about how much security can the Americans provide. And we know that between Saudis and Pakistanis, there has been a long-standing defense cooperation. I don't have to go in the details of that. We know that the Pakistani army, the military, they have trained the Saudi army, the Saudi Air Force. So it's a long story that has been going on as far as defense is concerned, between these two countries, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Now the point is, why this agreement was necessary. In my assessment, this was necessary, and this serious talks about this agreement would have started after the Israelis attacked Iran on June 13th. That is the time it was enough is enough as far as the Saudis are concerned, and they would have got into a serious deal with the Pakistanis for this agreement. Now, this agreement, even President Trump will not have a problem with. If the Pakistanis can provide deterrence, conventional war deterrence, I'm talking about, to the Saudis against Israel, Trump cannot be unhappy with that, because he does not want any escalation in the region. So, in a roundabout way, if he can't do something, let the Pakistanis do it. In any case, now, as I said, Pakistan has strategic ties with America. So this is how all these dots join up in my assessment. So therefore, this has been going on, the serious talk on the agreement, for at least 2-3 months now. So once we understand this background, now I'll come to the interpretation, and I'll give 3 points here in the interpretation. The first is, this agreement, which has been signed between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, it is not about nuclear weapons of Pakistan. It is not about Pakistan extending a nuclear umbrella to Saudi Arabia through this agreement, as many analysts are saying, because please refer to what General Kidwai said and why he held the press conference on September 17th. You see, I would rather take General Kidwai's words seriously than the words of Pakistan Defense Minister, because he is a politician and obviously he would not know the military matters very well. So it is very clear to me that this has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. It has to do with Pakistan's conventional war fighting capabilities and credible conventional deterrence, which will be strengthened further, as General Kidwai said, by the raising of Pakistan Army Rocket Force Command. So that's point number one. The second point is, last week I was in China and I was there to attend the 12th Beijing Shangshan Forum. Now, this is a very important annual event in the calendar of China, and this is organized by the Chinese Ministry of National Defense. And this time they had something like 100 heads of government, senior military leaders, and scholars from across the globe. And the key issue that they were discussing is in this particular chapter of the forum was how to have peace and stability in Asia Pacific region. I won't dwell here much further except to say, I have said in my earlier videos also, that the Chinese worldview of what is happening in this century aligns with the Russian worldview, and it is entirely different from the way the Westerners think, the Americans think, and even the Indians think. They think in a zero-sum game. These people think that it is possible for everybody to exist together. There is possibility of win-win, that everybody wins. So the point to make is, at this forum, on the 17th when I was attending it, this is the time that the agreement was signed. So I had that good opportunity to talk to a lot of Chinese scholars, both from the PLA as well as from the civilian side. And all of them very clearly said that China wants normal relations with India. It was very clear to me that this is what they want. Then there was a Pakistani delegation. In fact, as far as Pakistanis are concerned, because of their close ties with China, their scholars are in and out of the Chinese universities. So some good people were there at this forum. I could interact with them, and each one of them unambiguously told me, very clearly told me, that Pakistan wants peace and normal ties with India. Everybody told me this. But then the point is, what about this proxy war that is going on? You see, first of all, as I have said repeatedly, this proxy war is a military issue. And for the last 35 years, when the problem started in Jammu and Kashmir in 1990, Indian military leadership has been lazy all along. And they have failed to create credible conventional war fighting capabilities. And it's a consequence of that this proxy war goes on. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, this is all gray zone area, and they do this because they want India and Pakistan to formally or informally come on the table and talk their core concerns, that both sides talk. It is not that they are looking for a Kashmir resolution tomorrow, but what they want is, let's talk, let the talks begin, and alongside, let the relations be normal. So the point I'm making is, this is what I heard from the Chinese and the Pakistanis, that both want normal ties with India. In other words, as far as this agreement is concerned, I'm very clear that neither country, China or Pakistan, will do anything to jeopardize, to destroy, or to harm the strategic relationship that India has with Saudi Arabia. They will stay clear of that. Now, my third point is that plenty of people have said that this is an agreement that was signed in Riyadh. It is not a treaty or a pact. Therefore, it is not binding legally. And they are right. But my point is that when we are talking about a military agreement which is important for both the parties will put in their best, because both the parties want the outcome. Both the parties want that mutual trust build further in their relationship. So, as far as I'm concerned, I do not see much of a difference between a treaty or agreement at all, legality aside, because the investment of the two sides, as I said, will be great in this agreement. And what they did immediately after signing the agreement, the report came that the Saudis immediately informed the Iranians also about what this agreement was about. And the Iranians obviously would be happy, as I said, as far as Iran is concerned, and Saudis, they've had the rapprochement in Beijing with the mediation of the Chinese. So here is the point then. The Iranians have no problem with this agreement. The Saudis welcome this agreement. The Americans are in a roundabout happy that this has happened so that Trump need not have to take direct action, any action which he can't against the Israelis. The Chinese are happy because it brings peace and more than peace. Please remember, I did a video 1 month back where I said after Operation Sindoor, China will help Pakistan to become a leading military power in the region, and that is precisely what has happened. So everybody is happy, and this agreement is not directed against India at all. And it is should be very clear that this agreement has been, or what all has happened has been possible primarily because of Pakistan's performance as the world saw it in Operation Sindoor. Thank you very much.